A beautiful part of the world is Far North Queensland. Great Barrier Reef, the Daintree, stunning scenery, fabulous beer and so on. Kevin Byrne is Executive Director of Enterprise North based in Cairns. In a recent article in City Life magazine, he said that confidence had been destroyed in shutdown madness. In that article, which was mostly focused on government's destructive COVID overreach and the damage to Far North Queensland, he said, the government needs to play their part by not meddling unnecessarily, keeping their word, investing in infrastructure that focuses on growing community needs and creating the environment that encourages business investment to create growth alongside job opportunities. Kevin Byrne, thanks for joining us.
Mike, it's a great pleasure.
Now, can you tell us about the type of businesses Enterprise North represents and the regions that you cover?
Look, we represent a modest number of businesses, 20 plus in total, and we cover across the northeastern part of Queensland, or northeastern part of Australia actually. We're named Enterprise North because we concentrate our work around policy and infrastructure issues with a focus across Northern Australia. We see ourselves as integral to the development of Northern Australia, which is the top 25% of the Australian continent. It's a big landmass. We work collaboratively with, as best as possible, organisations in the Northern Territory and Northern Western Australia. But our policy work and the infrastructure projects that we advocate for most of the time apply to northeastern Queensland. And we're based in Cairns. Our membership actually has a view to making life better for our northern communities and to see them grow and prosper and to provide opportunities as we move forward as a country.
We know costs are a big problem for Aussie businesses, notably energy and labour costs. Can you tell us what costs are the most problematic for your North Queensland businesses? I would imagine freight being one of those.
Freight's one because of the vast distances, and there's a great challenge here about how we handle that. Do we put more and more big trucks on the road? I don't think so. I think we need to start looking laterally at improving our rail connectivity. I mean, we've gone off rail for the last number of decades, and I think that we need to revisit that and have a look at how rail is going to play a more important part in the future and to get big trucks off our already stretched road system. So there's a cost there. The other cost is with energy in all its forms, really, and the challenge about how we marry the energy requirements for the future to our population base. Now, there's a great deal of emphasis saying on, what we're going to do is have energy supplied by the sun and wind, and that's the direction we need to go, and you hear that religiously from those that are on the environmental side. Well, that's not going to be enough. So we have to have a look at the energy mix in the future, and energy is too high here. The cost of energy is too high. Similarly, the costs of insuring our businesses, the activities of those businesses, and more importantly, equally as important, is the domestic insurance costs for those people who live in Northern Australia. I mean, these are big challenges that tax the minds of governments, state and federal, as to how we address that. But, you know, it's been taxing the minds of these people for 30 years now. And one of the reasons why we are so vocal in this space is because we're saying out loud regularly we need to attend to these issues rather than identifying them and putting them on the back burner. And we've done this too often across Northern Australia. And one of the reasons for that is we don't have the population numbers to justify boots on the ground in our parliament houses, whether they're down in Canberra or in Brisbane. or in Darwin or in West Australia. So we need to grow our population across the north to justify the boots on the ground in our parliamentary system where the decision makers are. So hence our emphasis on growing populations across Northern Australia and making sure we have taxation regimes and investment regimes and so on that will support that population growth.
It's all very well talking about great crops or having wonderful product to sell to the consumer, whether they're a tourist or local or for export, whether it's international or national. Got to have skilled labour. Is that a real problem, getting people to actually move there and actually become that skilled labour for industry up there?
Yes, it is, Mike, and the reason for that is pretty well this, that we're talking in Australia now at the end of a year into this pandemic that there's going to be a great migration from the urban centres to the regional centres. But really, when people sit down and do the sums and decide if they're going to move their families and themselves, there's got to be a carrot in it for them. Just at the moment, the costs are prohibitive for many of these people to move, and they look at the trajectory of where their lives are going to take them. So they need to know that there is going to be opportunities for themselves and their children. They need to know there's going to be good education systems, good health systems, good social systems, good recreational facilities, good schools, to make them take that leap of faith. I would suggest to them to look objectively at that, because I'm not a native of here. I come from a different part of the world, but I know a lot of people who've taken the leap of faith to come into regional Australia, and they do very, very well. But they do very, very well when governments have a view to making sure that the support mechanisms for them to make that leap of faith are there. Now, we don't expect to have, massive hospitals at a great cost to the taxpayer for a small population base. We get it that these things will come as population grows, but we need the confidence in the region that governments have our back to make sure that policies and infrastructure will be provided to ensure that that steady growth will increase. So cumulatively, over decades, we know that we're going to have, for example, in Cairns City, we have a recorded population base of, say, 170,000 in the geographic boundaries of Cairns City. We should be able to confidently say, listen, that's going to grow to 250,000 in the next 12, 15 years. And by the way, that 250,000 will translate into 300,000 by the year 2035. They're the sorts of figures we need to talk about, and we need to have the confidence that the governments of the day and the governments of the future will understand that and be committed to making sure there is a decentralisation in Australia out of the bigger urban centres into regional Australia, and in particularly Northern Australia that I represent.
This may seem to many as a ridiculous question, but because you've had so much rain, I mean, and gentle sea breezes becoming cyclones before you know it. But what about water? I mean, your water security up there, are the catchment areas big enough to sustain a growing population and industry too?
Well, we've got to jump this hurdle of sensible issues in relating to how we manage the environment. I mean, this part of the world is gripped at times for years at a time, and then the emphasis goes off it by greenie fever and illogical interpretation of climatic events and other issues. So there is an overemphasis on the negativity and the negative spin. Look, some years ago, I proposed a position for the Queensland government of the day to adopt, when there was a drought in the southeast corner of Queensland, that we provide further dams in Northern Australia, and if we were really serious, we could provide and we could pump water from those bigger dams all the way down south. it followed a proposal to provide gas from Papua New Guinea all the way down to Gladstone, for example. And I propose that we follow a similar pipeline route. Now, that was poo-hooed at the time, but I think there is merit in that sort of thinking. We have far too few genuine catchment facilities for water to store and grow the agriculture and the horticultural sector of our part of the world. I think as we grow our population, the demand will be there. The demand is there now, but it comes at some cost, and this is one of the costs of doing business up in our part of the world. But having said that, if we are far-sighted and we are visionary, we can provide this. And there are organisations like ours, Enterprise North, and the regional development organisations that are basically supported by the federal government across the north, who are looking into collaboration to making sure that we have enough water and energy resources for the growth I'm talking about to provide some competitive cost to remove a lot of the excessive cost pressures in that area.
If somebody wants to find out more about northeast Queensland, right up the top, do you know of a good website that we could perhaps visit?
Look, yes, I do. There's Cairns Tourism Industry Association has a website. I mean, Tourism Tropical North Queensland has a website. There's any number of websites about our part of the world. But if you want to talk about the economic realities and the issues that really are driving the economic agenda here, then visit Enterprise North, if you will, and contact us. We're only too happy to make contact back again and discuss. You know, the beautiful thing about our part of the world is we're out there, we're visible, people know where Cairns is, they know Australia, and we want a lot of people to come visit us. We want people to come and live here. We want people to participate in the future growth and development. And I thank you for allowing us to do this on your show. Thank you very much, Mark.
Yeah, it's just missing the bacon and eggs for breakfast down by the waterfront, or a couple of cold beers at Hemingway's, either in Cairns or in Port Douglas. But you never know. I mean, we've been up there twice in a few months. We may have to do that again. Byrne from... You
better do that quickly.
We'd have to
do that quickly and with a lot of confidence, mate.
Kevin from Enterprise North, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jeremy Siegel, finance professor at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School, said inflation could spike to 20% in the next 2 or 3 years due to unprecedented fiscal and monetary stimulus and an explosion of the US money supply. Siegel criticised Fed Chair Jerome Powell for not acting to quell inflation in the near term. Professor Wharton called Powell the most dovish chairman he's ever seen and said that the Fed chair's stance could be a problem down the road. And critics argue that a dovish monetary policy left unchecked could overheat an economy and result in runaway inflation. Blake Christian is a partner at Holthouse, Carlin and Van Trite. First of all, Blake, great to see that you're still alive after a very, very busy time at work.
Yeah, we got an extra month extension on individual returns, but it was still pretty hectic.
That would have brought joy to your heart. I can hear the joy in the voice, in fact. Inflation has jumped to a level not seen since 2008. What were the main reasons for the increase?
Well, most of it's energy costs, somewhat surprising in the U.S., but we have a huge shortage of used cars. And so that spiked about 25%, the used cars, which factors into that inflation mix. And so a lot of people are unloading their used cars. A lot of that has to do with COVID, and all the rental car companies quit buying, obviously, because there was no travel. And so you don't have all of those rental cars, going to other consumers down the road, 2 or 3 years down the road.
Is this a temporary hiccup, or are prices such as fuel expected to go up for quite some time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we had this pipeline problem on the East Coast, so that, certainly it has something to do with it. And, certain states like California, they have different mixes that they switch over, and they're more costly in the summer. But and people are feeling very good with all the vaccinations about traveling again. So there's this huge surge in people buying gas and things. So I think there's reasons behind it. What people aren't talking about is the regulatory environment that we have here with the Biden administration. Somebody in his administration was kind of euphoric about the pipeline situation, and they commented, well, if everybody had electric cars, this wouldn't be an issue. And so, it kind of back to the, don't let any crisis, go by without capitalizing on it. And so I think the regulatory environment again is such that it's going to be more costly to drill for oil, to process it, to put it in your car. So it's not going to be 45% spike that we've had in the last 12 months, but I think we're going to see year over year kind of costs, 10 plus percent, just because this administration doesn't want us using petroleum products.
Interesting, the carbon footprint of electric cars is greater than the normal car. Go figure that. Pretty bizarre, isn't it? But, if you have the electric car for 8 years, no one knows how long they will last, but they might last the 8 years. After the 8 years, they start to pay dividends. So you buy the electric car, wreck the earth, according to the greenies, and then after 8 years, you're going to save it. Does it make sense to you? I don't think so.
Well, yeah, we just had Elon Musk pull, Bitcoin off his list of ways to pay for his Teslas, because, he was getting a lot of pressure from environmental groups that crypto mining was a problem. And my question to Elon, who I have a lot of respect for, is, well, does it bother you that most of your cars get their electricity from coal-fired plants? And, maybe he should stop selling his cars until they convert to some cleaner energy. I don't know.
Maybe windmills on the top of the car. That'd be great. But they used to have hats, remember the caps, and you have a little windmill on the top of that. Maybe that could be the way to go. We'll all have our portable windmill sitting on our nonga, and but that'd be fantastic. You would look great, I have to say.
Right. I'm all for nuclear.
Well, so where would you put that? Where would you put that?
Yeah, it's a lot of NIMBYs, not in my backyard. People out there, but yeah, it's still the most efficient, and there hasn't been a new plan, I think, in the U.S. since the 1980s. So I think it's time.
I think the Greenies, including Biden, would like to put the nuclear plants somewhere where the sun don't shine. Now, where is the expectation of where energy prices are headed?
A lot of the big investment houses and business publications, they're all saying right now, oh, it's all temporary, and the Biden administration is saying, oh, this spike is all temporary. Yellen kind of got caught in, I think on May 4th saying, oh yeah, we might have to increase interest rates because we're seeing this inflation, and she had to walk that back. But I think we're in a very inflationary period. Reminds me a lot of the Carter years, and I think we're seeing a huge blip right now. But the trend is definitely up, and I think we're going to see it for the next few years.
If you see a 20% spike in inflation, a house that was 100,000 will be 120. In fact, it'll be even more, because if you allow then for the raw materials, the labour and so forth, building that house, that will even add more. So you could probably quite comfortably see a house price rise by 20 to 40%, I would think, because you've got all the other bits added to it. Even with a 20% inflation hike, that's when you're competing with Venezuela. I mean, who do you think will win, Venezuela or the US under Comrade Biden?
A race to the bottom, yeah. I mean, out here in Park City, in the last 18 months, we've seen the square footage build cost increase by about 25%, and it's not a pretty sight.
What about the effect of inflation on other aspects of the economy, such as asset values, wages, and so on?
Well, yeah, I mean, wages, is going to be the real problem. There's this push to a $15 minimum wage across the country. That's going to drive up costs, and you're not getting any additional productivity out of it. And that's the troubling part to the economy is if you're just raising prices but not getting any productivity out of it, it's a real downward spiral. And the other thing is, even the moderate inflation rates that are being predicted for 2021 and 2022, in the 1.8, 2.2 range, those are still quite a bit more than what they're predicting in Europe. And we all know that it's a very international economy, and people are going to go and manufacture or have services done in the lower cost jurisdictions, and also with the tax increases that Biden is threatening. And so it doesn't bode that well for the U.S. economy, I think, with the inflationary trend, the regulatory trend, the tax policies, all of those coming together, and compared to other industrialized countries, people have choices all over the world where they're going to do business, and the U.S. is not going to be their first choice the way things are shaping up.
Interesting, the COVID. Thank you to the lab in Wuhan, did a lovely job of releasing that. But fabulous seeing the rest of the world scurrying, trying to stay afloat, pouring out money left, right and centre, keeping people at home, lock them down, feed them, they'll be okay. Slowly coming back. Business wasn't travelling all that great in some parts of the world anyway prior to COVID, but coming back, things just looking like they're going to start to come to a head. Europe, you can't keep giving money out. Look at the US, you can't keep just giving money out without it coming back to bite you. One country that is still doing particularly well, the manufacturer of COVID itself, was China, and they're doing pretty well indeed. So it's ironical that we have the West, Europe, other countries still going through this pandemic, trying to keep the economy going, paying out their citizens, keeping them alive, which is what you can do. But at the end of the day, if you throw this money out, it has to come back and really bite you on the backside, doesn't it, Blake?
Absolutely. And, I actually feel bad that I don't have my mask on. There's so much confusion over here whether we should be masked or not, whether we've been, taking the jab or not. So it's really kind of comical when you go into the stores and some people are wearing masks, some aren't, and people are giving nasty looks to both groups. It's you can't win these days. It's a mess.
It is a mess. The old mask. I mean, look at Joe Biden. First of all, wore it on his ear, then wore it, and then doesn't wear it, and then wears it. So a great message there. The ear was fine. Never got COVID. He was apparently quite safe because he wore his mask, never got COVID. Now it takes it off, he doesn't get COVID. Where does it end? I mean, I have my mask, but I normally wear it at night. No one knows me then. and goes to my lace stockings and stilettos. So it's a pretty good, and the whip. Maybe that'll keep COVID away. I know it keeps everybody else away. Look, if somebody wants to find out more about tax or my dress issues, how do they do that?
Okay, our website is hcbt.com, and you can also Google Blake Christian CPA, and my contact information and articles will be on that.
And just before we go, last time we did which was some time ago, before you started to relax and enjoy the extension in tax returns, I mean, it was your favourite time of the year, apparently. Out of 5, the economy at the moment for the US?
Actually, it is booming right now because, people are getting out, they're starting to travel. You can't even book hotels these days. It's so I would say that it's a very positive trend, but you have to balance it with the inflationary pressure and this massive $28 trillion debt load that we have right at the moment, which is going to keep going up. That's the worrisome part of our economy.
A couple of years' time, we'll soon know how bad the bite on our backside was, because again, 20% is a whopping increase, and it does compare quite favourably to Venezuela. And finally, I have to ask you, the president has been slipping. Out of 10, though, last time I think he was below the 5 mark. Out of 10, how would you rate President Biden's performance so far?
Okay, I'm gonna the mask issue. I'm gonna give him a 1. For overall, I think last time I gave him a 2.5. I'm gonna give him a 3 because he's kind of cut out the lockdown and given everybody a little more freedom, although a lot of states, the very liberal states, are still, not full lockdown, but they haven't released their prisoners yet.
Prisoners, I like that. That's in Washington. Actually, that's across the states. You must stay inside. Depends if it's a red or a blue state. What your liberties are, and some are still just hunkering down with those masks. Now, I think the MIT said the mask wasn't all that effective. In fact, it probably prolonged the coronavirus pandemic because it didn't allow herd immunity. But if I say that, which, by the way, this is not on YouTube because YouTube don't like us anymore. But if I do say that masks are a waste of time, I'm sure to get some poison pen letters. Blake Christian, thanks very much for putting up with my rant and my dress description at night. Talk to you next week.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.